Hello, algebra students. Today we're going to apply ratios and proportions to real-world problems. When you're approaching these problems, they're probably the easiest problems to recognize when you're going to set them up. Alright, but to recognize that, you want to recognize that you're given a comparison of two quantities that can be expressed as a ratio. And you'll see that pretty easy. It'll say, 40 out of this, this to this. So a lot of things will clue you in that you have a proportion to set up. Now when you set up your proportion, it is very important that you keep both ratios in the same order. That is the most important part of these word problems. And then all you do is solve the proportion. Now, it is important to recognize what your answer is going to represent. So always kind of summarize your answer at the end so you know what you're solving for. So let's look at it. Example 1. A recipe that yields 12 buttermilk pancakes call for 2 cups of flour. How much flour is needed to make 30 and change biscuits to pancakes? Now it says a recipe yields 12 buttermilk pancakes and it calls for 2 cups of flour. So we can either write our ratios as pancakes to flour, or we can write it as flour to pancakes. Doesn't matter which way you set it up, as long as you set both ratios up in the same order. So let's go. 12 pancakes to 2 cups of flour should equal, we're looking for the amount of flour here. So we don't know the flour, so our denominator would be our variable needed to make 30 pancakes. So we would put 30 on top. Notice, pancakes are on top, flour on bottom. And now we solve the proportion. 12F equals 2 times 30 gives you 60. Divide by 12, and you get flour equals 5. It would take 5 cups of flour to make 30 pancakes. Alright. Number 2. A basketball player made 40 out of 60 free throws last year. If he shoots 80 free throws this year, how many can you predict he will make? So again, we're going to figure out how we're going to write the ratio. We're going to say the total of free throws made to the total free throws shot. So he made 40 out of shooting 60. That should equal, we don't know how many he makes out of 80, so we're going to put the number made out of 80. Okay? So if we go ahead and solve the proportion, cross multiply here, 60 times m is 60m. 40 times 80 is going to equal 3,200. When you divide by 60, you get, he would make approximately 53 free throws out of 80. Okay? Example 3 says the ratio of dogs to cats. So right away, I tell you dogs to cats is equal to 4 to 7. Write it right away. Label what the numerator and denominator represent. There are 32 dogs at the local pound. How many cats are there? So we know the ratio is 4 to 7. That should equal. We put dogs in the numerator here. So I'm going to put the 32 dogs in the numerator. I don't know the number of cats, so I'm going to make that my denominator. I will cross multiply. 4 times c is 4c equals 32 times 7 is 224. Now I would divide by 4, and there are 56 cats at the pound. And kind of look to make sure your answer makes sense. in our ratio, the number of dogs is less than the number of cats. Does that happen with our final answer? Yeah, if we have 32 dogs, we're going to have more cats. Alright, two more examples here. It says, a recipe for pumpkin pie requires 3 pounds of pumpkin, right, to make 1 pie. If you have 24 pounds of pumpkin, how many pies can you make? Many of us can probably do this in our head, right? But I'd like to see the setup. 3 pounds of pumpkin to 1 pie equals, you have 24 pounds of pumpkin. How many pies can you make out of this? Well, when you cross multiply, you get 3p equals 24. And number of pies you can make is going to be 8. Alright, example 5. A 20-foot building casts a 12-foot shadow. So you got to remember, you have the building and then you got the shadow down here, right? You know the building is 20 feet, the shadow is 12. So if we go the height of the building to the length of the shadow, that is going to be a 20-foot building to a 12-foot shadow. How tall is a building that casts an 18-foot shadow? So we have 20 over 12 equals, you don't know the height of the building, and that's what we put on top, so that's going to be our variable, and the shadow is 18 feet. So now when we cross multiply, you get 12b equals 20 times 18. It's going to be 360. When you divide by 12, you end up with a building that is is 30 feet tall. Alright, if you think about this, this is semi-realistic because it's hard to measure a building with a ruler. Alright, now you could measure the length of a shadow. Therefore, you can get a very good estimate of the height of a building using its shadow. Okay, now example 6. Preston drove to his new college and then back home. Round trip, he traveled 212 miles. Preston drives a Honda Civic and gets 35 miles to the gallon. Preston needs to make 12 round trips a year. How much will it cost him in gas? Assuming the price of gas stays $3.60 a gallon. Well, the first thing we have to do is figure out how many gallons he's going to need. Now it says a round trip is 212 miles, and he's going to make 12 round trips. So you got to remember, 35 miles to 1 gallon is what his car gets. Okay. Now we have to drive how many miles? Well, to figure out our miles, we have to do 212 times 12. And that will give us, we have to drive 2,544 miles. Okay, so when we go to set up our ratio, 35 miles to 1 gallon equals, we need to drive 2,544 miles to, we don't know the number of gallons, G. So if we go to solve this, we would get 35G equals, cross multiply the other way, 2,544. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide by 35, and we would need approximately 73 gallons of gas. Now, if it's $3.60 per gallon, right, what would I do to figure out the total cost? Well, the cost is going to be the number of gallons I need times the cost per gallon, and 73 times 360 would give you approximately $262.80 in gas. Okay, that one's a little more difficult because you have numbers all over the place. But write your ratio, figure out what you need to answer the question. set up your proportion, find the number of gallons, and then use the number of gallons to find the cost. Now there's a set of you-try problems. What I would like you guys to do now is do the you-try problems on your own. Then continue watching the video once you're done with them, and the video will go through the remainder of the problems. But take some time on your own to complete the problems. Okay, hopefully you had time to go back and look at each of those problems in the you-tries. Now let's go through them real quickly. Number 1, a 380 cubic centimeter sample of titanium has a mass of 1,710 grams. Find the weight of a titanium sample that has a volume of 532 cubic centimeters. So right away we have 360 cubic centimeters to 1,710 grams equals, here they tell us the volume is 532, and we're looking for the number of grams, or how much it weighs. So that's going to be G. So cross multiply, 360G equals 1710 times 532 gives you 909,720. When we divide by 360, you get it would be about 2,527 grams. Okay. Number 2, the Sandburg football team outscored its opponent 5-2. Right? So it's Sandburg on top, opponent on bottom. So Sandburg was 5-2. So now 5-2 equals, if their opponent scored 38 points, right? We know that's going to go in the denominator because that's where we put our opponents. How many did Sandburg score? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Cross multiply, 2S equals 38 times 5 is 190. When we divide by 2, Sandburg scored what would that be? 95 points. Alright. Now number 3, in a certain desert environment there are a lot of small rodents. There also happens to be a lot of snakes that feed on the rodents. Ratio of rodents to rodent-eating snakes. So you have your rodents to snakes is equal to 13 to 3. There are 4,000 snakes in the area. How many rodents are there? Well, we set up our proportion. Rodents to snakes equals, here they tell us snakes. Where did we put that? In the denominator. And we're looking for our rodents. So cross multiply, 3R equals 13 times 4,000 is 52,000. When you divide by 3, there are going to be approximately 17,333 rodents. Okay. Gary can type 3 pages in 18 minutes. So pages to minutes is going to be 3 pages, 18 minutes. So 3 over 18, how many pages? I don't know the pages here. That's what I'm looking for. In 33 minutes. So cross multiply, 18p equals 33 times 3 is 99. When you divide by 18, about 5.5 pages in 33 minutes. Okay? And last, Oscar loves cheeseburger. He enters a 24-hour cheeseburger eating contest. He eats a cheeseburger every 15 minutes. How many cheeseburgers does he eat during the contest? So it's a 24-hour contest, right? So he eats a cheeseburger, 1 cheeseburger every 15 minutes. That should equal how many cheeseburgers in, we have this in minutes, this in hours. But how many minutes are going to be in 24 hours? I'll do 24 times 60, and that's 1,440 minutes. So now, remember, 24 hours is equal to 60 times 24, which is 1,440 minutes. These units should match up. So 15C equals 1,440. When I divide by 15, I get the number of cheeseburgers would end up being 96. So 96 cheeseburgers in 24 hours. That can't be healthy, can it, huh? Alright. Now you may begin the homework. Good luck, and I'll be available for questions tomorrow. Thank you.